In the dim glow of a single kerosene lamp, Elara Voss sat hunched over her worn wooden table, her gnarled fingers dancing like spiders across threads of faded silk. The room was a crypt of forgotten things, dusty looms gathering cobwebs, shelves sagging under jars of herbs that whispered secrets to the wind. At 87, Elara was the ghost in the machine of the Voss family empire, a relic from a time when luck wasn't bought with boardroom deals but woven into the very fabric of fate. The Voss textile mill had been her life's blood, founded by her late husband in the fog-shrouded valleys of Eldridge Hollow. It churned out fabrics that seemed to carry whispers of prosperity. Buyers from across the country swore by Voss silks. They draped wedding gowns that never frayed, curtains that warded off misfortune, scarves that turned heads in boardrooms. But no one knew the truth. Not really. The threads weren't just dyed with indigo and crimson, they were infused with something older, something Elara called the weave. It started with the amulet, a palm-sized disc of polished obsidian, etched with runes that looked like veins pulsing under skin. Elara had crafted it decades ago, during a fever dream after her husband's death. She'd pricked her finger on a thorn from the blackthorn tree behind the mill, letting 3 drops of blood seep into the molten stone. Luck isn't given, she'd murmured to the cooling rock. It's bound. From that night, the mill's fortunes turned. Machines that jammed for competitors hummed like contented bees for Voss. Debts evaporated like morning mist. Competitors whispered of curses when their looms snapped. But the Voss family chalked it up to grit and genius. Elara's children, now silver-haired adults, themselves had long outgrown her superstitions. Harlan, the eldest son, ran the mill with spreadsheets and stock tickers, his office a sterile cube of glass overlooking the factory floor. His wife, Margot, managed a boutique arm, turning silk into high-fashion labels that graced Paris runways. Their daughter, Leela, fresh from an MBA at Yale, was the digital whiz, pushing Voss online with influencers and algorithms. And then there was Theo, the youngest, the black sheep who'd fled to the city lights, only to slink back when the inheritance checks started bouncing. They tolerated Elara like a quirky antique in the attic. She lived in the old cottage adjoining the mill, her meals delivered on silver trays that clashed with her chipped porcelain. But lately, the mockery had sharpened. Mother's brewing potions again. Harlan would chuckle at family dinners, his voice booming over crystal glasses. If only stocks rose on chicken bones, Margot would titter, her laughter like shattering glass. Leela rolled her eyes, scrolling TikTok for trends. Even Theo, nursing his whiskey, would mutter, "Useless relics belong in museums, Gran." Elara heard it all. The walls were thin, woven with her own threads. She said nothing, only smiled with lips cracked like dry earth. But inside, the weave tightened. One night, as rain lashed the cottage windows like accusatory fingers, she made her decision. The amulet, warm against her chest, pulsed like a second heart. "They've forgotten the blood," she whispered. Time they tasted the unraveling. The next morning, she packed a single satchel, a shawl knitted from mill scraps, a flask of elderberry wine, and the amulet, now strung on a chain of spider silk. She left a note on the kitchen table, scrawled in looping script, "The threads hold as long as the heart does. I've gone to mend mine. Forgive the loose ends. No goodbyes. No tears." Just a quiet click of the cottage door, and the crunch of gravel under her sensible shoes as she vanished into the mist-shrouded dawn. Harlan Voss arrived at the mill that Tuesday with his usual swagger, a fresh espresso in one hand and his phone buzzing with stock alerts in the other. The air smelled of wet wool and machine oil, a scent he'd once loved but now found cloying. "Morning, boss," grunted old Jenkins, the floor supervisor, wiping grease from his brow. Harlan nodded absently, already mentally tallying the quarter's projections. Orders were up 15%, thanks to Leela's viral campaign. Life was a well-oiled loom. By noon, the first thread snapped. It started in weaving hall 3, the heart of production. A routine inspection, nothing out of the ordinary. Harlan was mid-conference call with a New York distributor when Jenkins burst into his office, face ashen as uncooked dough. "Mr. Voss, sir, it's the looms. All of them. Jamming like they've got grudges." Harlan pinched a bridge of his nose. "Overheating? Faulty bobbins?" Jenkins shook his head, eyes darting like a cornered rat. Worse, threads. They're tangling on their own. Like they're alive, sir. Snarling up the works. Harlan dismissed it as hysteria. Jenkins was pushing 65. Probably needed retirement. But when he stormed down to the hall, the chaos hit him like a slap. Dozens of looms, state-of-the-art behemoths imported from Italy, groaned in protest. Shuttles flew erratically, threads coiling into Gordian knots that no blade could cut. Workers stood frozen, whispering prayers in half-forgotten dialects. One young operative, Maria, clutched a rosary, her fingers white-knuckled. It's like the machines are fighting back. Mr. Voss, twisting spite into every inch. By evening, production halted. The loss. $50,000 in scrapped silk, plus overtime for frantic repairs. Harlan fired off emails to technicians blaming sabotage. But deep in his gut, a whisper stirred. Mother's gone. He'd found her note that morning, crumpled it without a second thought. Superstitious nonsense. Margot had laughed over brunch. Good riddance to the witch's brew. More room for progress. That night, Harlan dreamed of threads. Endless strands slithering up his legs, binding his arms. Whispering in Elara's cracked voice, "You mocked the weaver, now feel the pull." He woke sweating, the amulet's absence a phantom itch on his chest. Elara always wore it, tucked under her collar like a guilty secret. Where was it now? 3 days later, Margot Voss glided into the Voss flagship boutique on Fifth Avenue, her Louboutins clicking like metronomes of affluence. The store was a temple to luxury crystal chandeliers, dripping light onto mannequins swathed in Voss silk that shimmered like liquid moonlight. Today's launch, the Elysium collection. Ethereal gowns priced at 5 figures, touted as fate's finest drape. Influencers milled about, phones poised for the perfect shot. Margot's smile was a blade, sharp and unyielding. The event kicked off flawlessly. Champagne fizzed, flashes popped. Leela live-streamed from a velvet chaise, her captions trending. #Voss luck strikes again. But midway through the runway show, as the finale gown, a cascade of midnight blue silk swept down the catwalk. Disaster unfurled. The model, a willowy starlet named Sienna, paused under the spotlight. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the fabric shifted, not removed. Threads writhed like serpents, coiling up the hem, climbing Sienna's legs in a slow, deliberate creep. She froze, eyes widening in terror as the gown tightened like a noose. "Get it off!" she shrieked, clawing at the silk that now pulsed against her skin. Pandemonium. Guests fled in a stampede of designer heels. Leela's stream exploded, millions watching the haunted gown melt down. Margot lunged on stage, scissors in hand, but the blades snapped like twigs. Only when an assistant doused it with water did the threads relent. Slumping into sodden ruin, Sienna, hyperventilating, was rushed to an ambulance. The boutique? Evacuated for biohazard. Some idiot called it alive. By midnight, #Voss curse trended worldwide. Margot, holed up in her penthouse, scrolled the vitriol. Witchcraft and couture. #boycott Voss. Her hands shook as she dialed Harlan. "It's the old hag's doing. That damn amulet, he took it." Harlan, bleary from another sleepless night, snorted. "Margot, get a grip. It's a PR nightmare. Not poltergeists. We'll spin it vintage distress technique or some crap." But Margot wasn't laughing. She'd found Elara's note in the trash, smoothed it out. Loose ends. That night, she dreamed of her own wedding veil, the Voss silk that had billowed like clouds. In the dream, it strangled her, threats tasting of blood and betrayal. Across town, Leela Voss paced her loft, laptop screens glowing like accusatory eyes. The digital darling of the family, she'd built Voss's empire on pixels and persuasion. Her algorithms predicted trends before they hatched. Her ads converted skeptics to superfans. The gown fiasco? She'd already drafted a damage control post. A bold statement on impermanence, art imitating life's twists. But as she hit publish, Her power flickered. Not the lights, the grid. Her entire server farm, hosted in a climate-controlled vault, hummed and whined. Code scrolled across her monitors in gibberish, lines twisting into knots of corrupted data. What the? Leela hammered keys. But the malware, if it was malware, laughed back in binary barbs. Backups erased. Client databases shredded into digital confetti. By dawn, Voss's online empire was a ghost site, redirecting to error pages etched with faint runes. Leela called the ID firm, voice cracking. Hackers? Foreign agents? The tech on the line hesitated. Looks organic, miss. Like the code's unraveling itself. Ever hear of a self-weaving virus? Leela slammed the phone down, heart pounding. She hadn't seen Gran in months, but now, Elara's face haunted her feed, old photos resurfacing in meme hell. The Voss witch. Curse or coincidence? Theo texted from his dive bar. Told you the old bat was bad juju. You take her lucky charm? No one had, but it was gone. Theo Voss had always been the family's punchline. The son who traded mill shares for mixtapes and bar tabs. At 35, he was back in Eldridge Hollow, crashing in the mill's guest quarters, nursing ambitions of a Voss-branded craft beer line. Silken suds. He'd pitch over lukewarm IPAs. Harlan humored him. After all, blood was blood. The misfortunes had barely grazed Theo until the fourth day. He was in the old storage barn, rummaging for vintage labels to slap on his bottles, when the air thickened. Dust motes swirled unbidden, forming shapes like grasping hands. Weird draft, he muttered, but his skin prickled. Then the collapse. Not metaphorical, a literal cave-in. Shelves groaned, then buckled. Vintage crates of silk crashing down in an avalanche of splintered wood and moth-eaten fabric. Theo dove aside, shards grazing his arm, blood blooming on his sleeve. As the dust settled, he coughed out a laugh, manic, edged with hysteria. Close one, but it wasn't over. Pinned under a beam was his prototype. 6 cases of Voss Luck Lager, labels curling like dying leaves. He pried it free, popped a bottle. The brew foamed black, tasting of ash and regret. Spitting it out, Theo staggered back to the mill, arm throbbing. Harlan met him in the infirmary, bandages in hand. Sloppy, Theo. Father's ghost is rolling in his grave. Theo's eyes narrowed, wild. Father? Or mother? Gran's amulet, remember how she fussed over it? Said it kept the devil from the door. Harlan's jaw tightened. Fairy tales. Focus on the lawsuit from Sienna's people. They're claiming emotional distress and demonic possession. Theo barked a laugh. Demonic? Harlan, wake up. The mill's haunted. The store's cursed. Leela's fried. And now me? It's her. Elara. She didn't leave, she unleashed. That night, the brothers argued by the flickering hearth, shadows leaping like accusatory specters. Margot and Leela joined via video, faces gaunt in pixelated pallor. We hire a PI, Margot insisted. Track the old crone down. Buy her off. By luck. Leela scoffed, though her voice wavered. The site's down. Orders tanking. We're hemorrhaging followers by the hour. Theo leaned in, whiskey breath fogging the screen. Or we find the amulet. Get it back. Apologize. Harlan slammed his fist. Apologize to a senile witch? She's bluffing. Coincidences, that's all. But as the call ended, a chill wind snaked through the cracks. On the mantle, Elara's old photo fluttered, eyes seeming to follow them. And in the distance, thunder rumbled, a storm no forecast had predicted. Elara Voss trudged the winding paths of Eldridge Hollow, her satchel heavier than it should be. The amulet burned against her ribs, a constant reminder of the bind she'd severed. She'd chosen the back roads deliberately, cobblestone, veins leading to Widow's Peak, a crag where blackthorns twisted like arthritic fingers. There, in a hermit's cabin long abandoned, she'd hide, mend, or unravel completely. The journey was a gauntlet of memories. Passing the old chapel where she'd wed Elias, the amulet had warmed, threads of joy flickering in her mind's eye. But further on, by the river bend where the mill's waste once poisoned the waters before her we've cleansed it, the stone cooled, a warning thrum. They mocked the river too, she thought, called it progress when it choked on dyes. By the third night, she'd reached a peak. The cabin was a husk roof half caved, vines clawing the walls like vengeful lovers. Elara lit a fire with flint from her shawl, brewed tea from scavenged nettles. As flames danced, she unclasped the amulet, holding it to the light. Runes glowed faintly, pulsing with stolen luck. "You've served them well," she murmured. "Now, serve the balance." In the weave, she saw glimpses. Harlan's loom snarling, Margot's gown rebelling, Leela's codes nodding, Theo's brew turning foul. Each misfortune a loose thread pulled, not by malice, but by consequence. The blood-bound demanded reciprocity, love for luck, respect for the weave. They'd given scorn. Now, the unraveling. Harlan met him in the infirmary, bandages in hand. "Sloppy, Theo. Father's ghost is rolling in his grave." Theo's eyes narrowed, wild. "Father? Or mother?" Gran's amulet, remember how she fussed over it. Said it kept the devil from the door. Harlan's jaw tightened. Fairy tales. Focus on the lawsuit from Sienna's people. They're claiming emotional distress and demonic possession. Theo barked a laugh. "Demonic?" "Harlan, wake up. The mill's haunted. The store's cursed. Leela's fried. And now me? It's her. Elara. She didn't leave, she unleashed." That night, the brothers argued by the flickering hearth, shadows leaping like accusatory specters. Margot and Leela joined via video, faces gaunt in pixelated pallor. "We hire a PI," Margot insisted. "Track the old crone down. Buy her off. Buy luck." Leela scoffed, though her voice wavered. "The site's down. Orders tanking. We're hemorrhaging followers by the hour." Theo leaned in, whiskey breath fogging the screen. "Or we find the amulet. Get it back. Apologize." Harlan slammed his fist. "Apologize to a senile witch? She's bluffing. Coincidences, that's all." But as the call ended, a chill wind snaked through the cracks. On the mantle, Elara's old photo fluttered, eyes seeming to follow them. And in the distance, thunder rumbled, a storm no forecast had predicted. Elara Voss trudged the winding paths of Eldritch Hollow, her satchel heavier than it should be. The amulet burned against her ribs, a constant reminder of the bind she'd severed. She'd chosen the back roads deliberately, cobblestone, veins leading to Widow's Peak, a crag where blackthorns twisted like arthritic fingers. There, in a hermit's cabin long abandoned, she'd hide, mend, or unravel completely. The journey was a gauntlet of memories. Passing the old chapel where she'd wed Elias, the amulet had warmed, threads of joy flickering in her mind's eye. But further on, by the river bend where the mill's waste once poisoned the waters before her weave cleansed, it the stone cooled, a warning thrum. They mocked the river too, she thought, called it progress when it choked on dyes. By the third night, she'd reached a peak. The cabin was a husk roof half-caved, vines clawing the walls like vengeful lovers. Elara lit a fire with flint from her shawl, brewed tea from scavenged nettles. As flames danced, she unclasped the amulet, holding it to the light. Runes glowed faintly, pulsing with stolen luck. "You've served them well," she murmured. "Now, serve the balance." In the weave, she saw glimpses. Harlan's loom snarling, Margot's gown rebelling, Leela's codes nodding, Theo's brew turning foul. Each misfortune a loose thread pulled, not by malice, but by consequence. The blood-bound demanded reciprocity, love for luck, respect for the weave. They'd given scorn. Now, the unraveling. But doubt crept in like fog. "Are they my children still? Or strangers in my silk?" She wept then, tears hissing on hot coals, the amulet absorbing them like a sponge. In that moment, a vision sharpened, a figure approaching through the mist. Not family, something older. The blackthorn spirit, perhaps, come to claim its due. Elara clutched a stone. The game had begun, but the board was shifting. Victor Hale was the best in the business, discreet, dogged, with a nose for the buried. Hired by Harlan via encrypted wire, he arrived in Eldritch Hollow under cover of dusk, posing as a fabric buyer. "Find her," Harlan had growled over the phone. "And that trinket. Name your price." Victor's first stop, the cottage. It was eerily pristine, as if Elara had tittied for ghosts. He dusted for prints, his own, mostly rifled drawers for clues. A half-read book on Celtic knots. A loom with unfinished warp threads dangling like nooses. In the kitchen, the note. Victor pocketed a shard of it, sensing the weight of words, and said, "Interviews next. Jenkins at the mill. Mrs. Voss. Kind soul. Warned me about bad moons once. Saved my hide during the '08 flood. Maria the operative. She blessed my baby's blanket. Now the looms hate us. Whispers spread Elara as saint as sorceress. Victor jotted it all, but his skin crawled. Coincidences piled like cordwood, a trucker swerving into the mill gates, spilling dyes that stained the river black, a buyer canceling $1 million order after a premonition dream. By day 5, Victor tracked her trail to Widow's Peak, footprints in mud, a snapped twig scented with elderberry. He radioed Harlan. She's holed up, all right. Remote. You want extraction? Harlan's reply crackled. Do it quiet. And search for the amulet Blackstone, runes, worth more than gold. Victor crested the ridge at twilight, revolver holstered but ready. The cabin loomed, smoke curling from its chimney like a beckoning finger. He approached soft-footed, ears straining for chants or cries. Instead, silence broken by a low hum, like distant looms. The door creaked open unbidden. Inside, Elara sat by the fire, amulet in lap, eyes milky but piercing. You've come for the threads, Mr. Hale? Victor froze, hand twitching toward his gun. How? The weave tells. Sit, T. He didn't sit. Mrs. Voss, your family, they miss you. Send their regards. She chuckled, dry as autumn leaves. Regards? Or regrets? Her fingers traced the runes and Victor's vision blurred. Flashes. His own past sins, a botched case. A partner's death. Threads of guilt he'd buried. He staggered back. What are you? The weaver, she said softly. And you've woven your own snare, chasing shadows for silver. Victor bolted into the night, heart hammering. But as he fled, the amulet's hum followed a siren's call, unraveling his resolve. Back at the mill, fractures deepened. Harlan's board called an emergency meeting virtual to avoid the cursed premises. Projections flashed red, stocks plummeting 30%, suppliers ghosting, lawsuits stacking like unpaid bills. It's her. Margot hissed from her screen, bandaged from a freak fall in the boutique threads, from a display snagging her heel, yanking her down marble stairs. Elara's hexing us. Leela, holed up with takeout and firewalls, nodded grimly. Her servers were quarantined, but glitches persisted. Ads, auto-posting apologies in ancient tongues. I ran the data. Patterns match her rune sketches from the family archives. It's not random. Theo, arm in a sling, slammed a beer. Told you. We drive up there, grovel. Get the damn thing back. Harlan's face twisted. Pride warred with panic. Grovel? To that batty old. Lightning cracked outside, shattering a window. Glass rained like accusations. In the shards, they swore they saw Elara's reflection, smiling. Desperation forged alliance. They piled into Harlan's SUV at dawn, Harlan driving, Margot shotgun clutching pearls, Leela navigating via glitchy GPS, Theo in back nursing a flask. The road to Widow's Peak wound like a constrictor, fog thickening with each mile. Radios staticed with folk tales, witches in the crags, luck stolen from fools. Halfway up, the engine sputtered. Harlan cursed, coasting to a halt. Overheating. Impossible, it's new. Theo popped the hood. Hoses tangled, serpentine and slick. Threads. He breathed, yanking free a coil of silk. No, actual silk woven into the belts. From the mill. How? Margot whimpered. Leela's phone died, screen frosting with runes. Harlan pounded the wheel. Push it. We're walking the rest. They trudged, mud sucking at boots, wind howling Elara's name. Paranoia bloomed. Was that a shadow pacing them? A whisper in the thorns? By the cabin, dusk bled into night. The door stood ajar, firelight beckoning. Elara! Harlan bellowed. Mother, enough games! Silence. Then, her voice, frail but steel-edged. Games? You taught me those, son. They pushed in. Elara sat unchanged, amulet gleaming. Victor Hale slumped in the corner unconscious, a gash on his brow from his earlier flight. You! Leela gasped. Gran! What's happening? The business, it's dying. Elara's eyes swept them, weary. Dying? Or shedding skin? You built on my weave, then cast me aside. Old. Useless. Superstitious. Her voice cracked. The amulet binds luck to blood. Yours flowed cold, so I took it back. Margot lunged for the stone. Give it! You witch! Threads erupted from the floorboard's phantom silk, coiling Margot's ankles, yanking her down. She screamed as they bound her wrists, tasting like iron and tears. Harlan charged, but vines from the walls snared him, thorns pricking blood. Leela froze, codes flashing in her mind's eye, nodding her thoughts. Theo dropped to his knees. Gran, please, we're sorry. Elara rose, amulet aloft. It pulsed, drinking their pleas. Visions assaulted them, the mill's birth. Elara's bloodied hands birthing prosperity. The slow rot of ingratitude, each mockery a snip in the weave. Harlan saw his father's grave, weeds choking the stone. Your luck ends here. Margot relived her vows, silk vows now strangling. Leela's algorithms dissolved into chaos. Theo tasted his failures, Brugun bitter. The karma you sowed, Elara whispered. Wrinkles demand their due. Climax brewed in the cabin's confines. Harlan, thorns drawing crimson beads, rasped. We were wrong. Blind. Come home. Fix this. Elara's laugh was a rustle of dry leaves. Home? Where mockery weaves the walls. She circled them, amulet trailing light like a comet's tail. Luck isn't a trinket, Harlan. It's a pact. You broke it with scorn. Now, mend or unravel. Theo, unbound by some mercy, crawled forward. What do you want? Blood? Rituals? Name it. Her gaze softened. Just a flicker. Truth. Admit the weave. Honor the old ways. One by one, they broke. Margot sobbed apologies, pearls scattering like tears. Leela confessed deleting Elara's superstitious lore from the site. Harlan, pride shattering, whispered of stolen recipes. Elara's herb blends passed off as innovations. Theo vowed to brew with her nettles, not neglect. The amulet warmed, threads loosened, retreating to shadows. Victor stirred, groaning. Elara's weave had spared him. A thread for another tale. But suspense lingered. As they huddled, a rumble shook the peak. Rocks stumbled, the cabin groaning. The storm, Leela yelped, checking her revived phone. No earthquake? Unforecast. Elara's eyes sharpened. The blackthorn calls its tithe. The bind weakens run. Chaos. They fled into the gale, cabin crumbling behind. Harlan carried Margot, thorn scratches weeping. Theo hauled Victor. Leela led the way with her screen's glow. Down the slope, mudslide roared, a wall of earth and root, chasing like vengeance incarnate. They reached the SUV as it crested, engine roaring back to life unbidden. Piling in, Harlan gunned it, tires spinning slurry. In the rearview, the peak swallowed the cabin, blackthorns reclaiming their due. Silence in the descent, broken only by ragged breaths. Elara sat serene, amulet dimmed. The weave mends slow. Trust must be rewoven. Weeks blurred into wary reconstruction. The mill's looms purred again, threads straight as lies forgiven. But glitches persisted subtle, like aftershocks. A bolt of silk arriving rune-etched. A buyer dreaming of Elara, placing record orders. Harlan installed a corner office for her looms and herbs, no spreadsheets. Margot designed a heritage line, crediting the Voss matriarch's mystic touch. Leela's algorithms incorporated folklore feeds. Hashtag weave wisdom trending gently. Theo's lager launched. Voss Thorn Brew. Bitter lessons. Smooth finishes. It sold out. Elara returned, not as relic, but regent. The amulet hung shared past at councils a reminder. Victor? He vanished. Tale untold. But rumors swirled of a detective turned weaver in the hollows. Yet suspense shadowed. Late nights, Elara felt pulls, distant tugs, as if the blackthorn hungered still. Was the bind whole? Or fraying anew? Harlan's eyes lingered on the stone, ambition flickering. Margot's smiles hid barbs. The weave whispered warnings. Karma, after all, wears wrinkles. And threads once pulled, never fully forget. Months later, at the mill's centennial gala, Elara stood on stage, amulet aglow under spotlights. Luck is no loan, she intoned, voice carrying like wind through warps. It's a legacy woven with care. The crowd, investors, influencers, kin applauded. Harlan beamed pride. But as confetti fell, a single thread snagged Elara's sleeve. Blackthorn silk. She smiled secret, tucking it away. In Eldridge Hollow, fortunes rise and fall. But the weave? It endures. watching, waiting for the next loose end.